Hi there, I'm Vincent Boss and I provide dating and self-improvement advice. And in today's podcast, we're going to be discussing when your ex reaches breaking point. I provide audio coaching for breakup recovery, trying to get an ex back, attracting someone new, and life coaching. Visit www.dateme.tips for more details. Please check your spam and junk folders if you are expecting an email from me. Check out my socials for extra content. The links are in the description. So now let's get back into today's podcast, and today we are discussing when your ex reaches breaking point. So if you have been dumped and want to try to get your ex back, you need them to feel regret. You also need them to get to breaking point regarding reaching out to you. But how and when can this happen? In today's podcast, I'll be discussing the 3 stages for your ex-dumper to reach breaking point. So let's get straight into this, and point number 1 is belief in their choice. So first of all, we have to discuss the point that you as a dumpee probably don't want to consider, probably don't want to think about, but deep down in your heart, understand and respect, well, this is somewhat obvious, and that is that your ex-dumper believes in their choice at the time of a breakup. So when we're considering when your ex-dumper is going to regret their decision and reach breaking point, well, it's not going to be straight away. If your ex-dumper changes their mind a mere few days after the breakup, I would argue that the dust hadn't even really settled, and was it even really a breakup? Maybe just a time of deliberation and consideration between you and your now former partner before they decide, actually, we haven't ever broken up really properly anyway, and I want to stay together. So if your ex-dumper does come to that point, that moment, just a few days, maybe even a few weeks after the breakup, I don't really think the dust had actually settled, and therefore you probably hadn't really even broken up. Because at the time of a breakup, your ex-dumper is feeling a low level of romantic emotional attraction for you. If it hadn't hit the necessary low point, they wouldn't have actioned the breakup. If they weren't feeling a low level of attraction, they wouldn't have decided to end the relationship, and therefore they're not in a position where they want to reconnect. For them to feel regret, for them to decide that this was a big bad choice that they've made and they've actually made a huge error of judgment, they need to regrow romantic emotional attraction. And this is unlikely to happen anytime soon. It's not likely to be days, weeks, or even a few months. Most of the time, from my own research, a dumper will get to the conclusion that they've perhaps made the wrong choice at an average point of 6 months or so down the line. And that's the average. Sometimes it can be more than a year. And therefore we can see that at the time of a breakup, your ex-dumper is feeling a low level of romantic emotional attraction. They are not at the point of reconsidering their decision. They are not at the point of realizing that it was a huge error of their ways, and therefore they have belief in their choice. They've made the decision. They've actioned the breakup. They believe in what they're doing is right, not because they want to hurt you. Most dumpers do not want to hurt their dumpees. Most dumpers would feel terrible if they consider how their dumpee is feeling at the time of a breakup. They don't want to hurt you, but they want to protect themselves, and they want to protect their future. And this can be something else which, as a dumpee, can be hard to consider, hard to swallow, you might say, is that your ex-dumper is doing this for their future because they don't believe they're going to feel their own ultimate happiness and fulfillment if they continue on the path of this relationship with you. Now, this doesn't mean that they didn't love you in the past. It doesn't mean that they can't love you in the future. It doesn't mean that they don't love you to some degree right now. But what it does mean is that they don't feel confident and comfortable that the future is going to be something which fulfills them in the long term. That's why they've lost romantic emotional attraction. That's why they've ended the relationship. So, of course, at the time of a breakup, they're going to be feeling, you know what, this is what I want. It might feel awkward. I'm feeling quite bad that my dumpee is hurting. It feels somewhat strange to be single, but I believe it's the right choice. This is what I needed to do. I've been considering this for a few months. Most dumpers are likely to be considering this for a significant portion of time. Maybe it's a few weeks. Often it's a few months. Occasionally, if there's been a huge action via the dumpee, as in maybe they were cheating on their now dumper, the dumper finds out. Yes, in that instance, it could be very sudden, but by and large, generally speaking, your ex-dumper has been thinking about this for a while as their level of attraction has slowly but surely started to decrease. So this isn't a snap decision most of the time. Now, as a dumpee, you might be shocked at what's happened. As a dumpee, you might be flabbergasted. You might be thinking, I can't believe this has happened. I'm blindsided. My ex-dumper told me that they loved me only yesterday, and yet now I've been dumped. Well, you may have been told that by your ex-dumper. You may have felt that everything was fine, but your ex-dumper has been thinking of this for likely a significant portion of time, because as the level of romantic emotional attraction slowly but surely dropped for various potential reasons, they started to question the relationship. They started to question whether this really is the future that they see themselves in. And therefore, you might not see it coming, but your ex-dumper has been considering it for a while. And by the time and the point that they get to that moment where they action the breakup, they have ultimate belief in their choice. Yes, they might be a little bit nervous. Yes, they might be unsure of how things are going to pan out. But they've come to the conclusion after thinking about it significantly. So most dumpers are not doing this in a snap decision. So at the time of the breakup, they do have significant and ultimate belief in their choice. So when we consider when your ex reaches breaking point, it's not going to be any time soon. So if you were dumped last week, it's not likely that your ex-dumper will change their mind tomorrow, next week, or next month. You can get your ex back, but not all of you will, and not all of you will even want to when the future rolls around. But right now, we have to accept reality. And the reality is that your ex-dumper likely believes in their choice. So now let's get into point number 2 and the second point of today's podcast. Please like this video if you're watching on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. And point number 2 is fighting the urge. So now we're speaking a few months down the line. And again, I just need to say, I'm speaking about average instances. This can't be something which is specifically to you and your unique circumstances, because I don't know them. You know, if we speak via my audio coaching service, I can understand what you're going through and speak about things one-on-one with you, but I have to speak in a generalized sense, and therefore we're going to use the generalized averages that I found out through my significant research. And therefore we're going to be speaking about in this scenario that we're now maybe 4 or 5 months down the line post-breakup. We're speaking about a point in time where your ex-dumper has been living their life the way they want to, in a way which I refer to as the single honeymoon period, and they've been doing this for 4 or 5 months. So we're not quite at the average, we're not quite at that 6-month mark, but we are at a point in time where it is beyond those first few days, weeks, and early months. And your ex-dumper will be living their life in a way which at first seemed exciting and new, but now is starting to feel kind of mundane, a little bit boring, a little bit like, is this really what I wanted? Okay, I'm not with my dumpee, and there were things which weren't right. However, this isn't all that great. I was getting a bit of a buzz from living a single life. I've been on a couple of dates, but they've not come to anything. And as a dumpee, something else that you need to consider here is your ex-dumper may or may not have been on some dates during this time. That is for a different topic and a different day, but you have to understand that it may not have happened, but it possibly has. If you want to get your ex back, you need to try and get your head around the fact that maybe they have gone on some dates. Maybe they haven't, but maybe they have. However, if your ex-dumper is getting to the stage where they're fighting the urge to reach out to you, it's because that those dates they may have been on have come to absolute nothing. Now, this doesn't mean that you're a backup option, but it does mean that you are highlighted as someone who is very special in their mind, because they're starting to realise that single life isn't easy. They're starting to realise that finding a new long-term compatible partner isn't easy. And it's not about you being second best or a backup option. It's just about you really growing in their mind as someone who is very, very special, someone who is unique, a magical relationship, if you will, that gave them love at least to a certain point. Okay, at the time of a breakup, they weren't feeling the level of attraction necessary, and maybe this is where there's a bit of back and forth in your ex-dumper's mind, because on one hand, they're starting to feel like their life isn't that great. They're starting to feel a bit lonely. They're starting to feel like they're missing you a little bit, especially if you as a dumpee are living your life the right way and not chasing them and not harassing them. if you have used my version of a no contact rule, then right now your ex-dumper is really starting to feel intrigued. However, they're comparing this to the thought that they did dump you. And they're thinking, well, I need to remind myself, I did end the relationship with my dumpee for a reason. It wasn't like I did it for no reason at all, so I need to remember that. And they're fighting this back and forth. They're fighting the urge to reach out to you. Remember, we're 4 or 5 months down the line. Things aren't as new as they once were when they became a single person. The life they've decided to live isn't really any better, more exciting, or more fulfilling than when they were with you. And now they have the unfortunate situation of also being romantically alone, whereas with you, they had a dumpee who did love them. They was feeling the love. They was feeling the desire, okay? Depending on your situation, about how it could actually have been precisely, but in a generalized sense, they probably were feeling that they had a romantic partner who did love them, and therefore now they don't. That is something which is very, very different in their life, and something which now they're going to be missing. Now, are they at that breaking point where a dumper is going to decide, you know what, I can't take it anymore, I need to reach out? No, they're not quite at breaking point, but they're starting to move towards that period of time in their life where a decision is needing to be made, because they can't continue like this. They ended your relationship because they weren't feeling fulfilled or happy, and now they're feeling just the same, if not worse, because they don't have that romantic love within them as well. They're feeling very, very lonely, and as certain days tick by on the calendar, maybe New Year's Eve comes and goes, maybe their birthday comes and goes, and they don't hear from you, this is going to really be pulling on them, because they're starting to feel those moments of loneliness that only a single person will understand when those days on the calendar happen, and you don't get that card, you don't get that text, you don't hold that person's hand. They are the moments in particular which can really pull on you. It doesn't mean that a dumper is going to reach out instantly on those special days, but it could set in motion something which triggers them to the point where a month or two beyond a birthday, New Year's, or what it may be, that then they decide they can no longer take it anymore. But right now, your dumper is fighting the urge. Now, if you would like advice and support about how to try and increase the chance of one day getting your ex back, then you may want to consider my audio coaching service, where me and you can speak one-on-one about your unique specific situation. Go to my website, www.dateme.tips, for more information about how I can become your coach and your teammate via my audio coaching service. Talking about your feelings can also improve your mental health. It helps prevent the build-up of negative emotions, which can lead to stress, anxiety, depression, and even physical health issues. Speak your heart to free your mind. So now let's get into point number 3 and the final point of today's podcast, about when your ex reaches breaking point. And point number 3 is the breaking point crossroads. Now this is something that as a dumpee, you will be happy to hear. And that is your ex-dumper will come to a breaking point crossroads. This is a moment where they will go left or they will go right. But when and how does this actually occur? Well, we can talk about generalized times. We can speak about, as I say previously, that the average amount of time that I see a dumper reaching out to their dumpee being around 6 months or so post-breakup where no contact has been implemented. But there are caveats to this. For instance, if you as a dumpee chased your ex for a month or two post-breakup, well, in my mind, the clock starts once you implement no contact. So in that regard, we could be looking 8 months post-breakup, and so on and so on. There are also many, many nuances and differences about what can affect things, but I would say most of the time you're looking at about 6 months post-breakup as per average. Once we get beyond a year, your chances of success as a dumpee sadly start to decline, but they're not totally extinguished. As I said earlier, you might have a situation where your ex-dumper reaches out to you after a year, beyond 2, 3, 4 years. It does happen, but the chances of success as a dumpee sadly do start to decline beyond a year post-breakup, so let's just bear that in mind. However, your ex-dumper is not going to come to this breaking point crossroads purely on time. This isn't something where we can set a watch to and say, okay, it's been 6 months to the day that I last reached out to my dumper, and that was at the time of a breakup, so that means they should be getting to a crossroads now. They're going to text me any day. Sadly, it is not something we can set our watch to, because the reason they will get to breaking point, the reason when they will get to these crossroads is something that we can't see and something that we can't know for certain. And that is that thing again, romantic emotional attraction. Remember at the beginning of today's podcast, I said that they ended your relationship when it hit the necessary low point. When it dropped to a low point, they ended your relationship. Well, they're only going to consider reaching out to you when this level of attraction reaches the necessary high point. And you as a dumpee can help grow this via my version of a no contact rule, via the other hints, tips and advice that I've given in my other podcasts, and more specifically through my audio coaching service, where we can really analyze your scenario one-on-one. That is how you can do your part as a dumpee to regrow this level of attraction in your ex-dumper's mind. But up and until it hits that high point again, they aren't going to feel regret, they aren't going to reconsider their decision, and they won't get to that crossroads. However, they will likely at some stage get to a moment in time where a crossroads of such does happen. And when they get to that moment, they will consider the pros and the cons. They will consider the relationship you had, how the breakup went, and probably most importantly, post-breakup, how they are feeling, how you reacted, and everything in between. They will then come to a decision about whether or not they should reach out to you. Now, as a dumpee, if they do reach out to you, you don't have to accept this. You might think, I'm not happy for my dumper to just stroll back into my life. But if you want your ex back, then of course, this is what you're looking for. And this is the moment where you, if you have lived your life the best way you can, are going to increase the chance of your ex-dumper getting to the crossroads and deciding, yes, I actually miss my ex. Yes, I believe I made a mistake. Yes, I'm going to reach out to them. And that is the breaking point. The breaking point moment of where your ex-dumper feels that their own life isn't as great as they predicted, and they reconsider the relationship that you two had together, and then think about how actually you two being together could be the best thing for them moving forward, in particular if they feel that your value as a person has somewhat increased since you were last together. And that is where you can be really growing your value, increasing the level of attraction in your ex's mind by doing your side of things. Again, I've mentioned this in previous podcasts. If you've done your part, then when your ex-dumper gets to this moment where they're really starting to feel that breaking point, do I reach out, don't I? Do I, don't I? Getting to the crossroads, left or right, there is a much better chance that one day your ex-dumper will reach out to you and you get your ex back. If you believe that this podcast has helped you, then please consider buying me a coffee. The link to do so is in the description.